Assalamu alaikum and welcome to Perspective. We'll be talking about, of course, the developments as they stand today of the dissolution of Assembly, the National Assembly, also followed by what has happened in the Supreme Court with the Chief Justice taking notice of what has transpired and the case being heard tomorrow, the legal ramifications of what it means overall as far as the ruling of the Speaker is concerned, the ramifications for the whole political process is concerned, and also particularly what it means for the future as far as the PDM is concerned, as far as the opposition is concerned, as far as the business of the government is concerned as it stands today, whether it will amount to, as the opposition is saying, going against the constitution. All of those things today on Perspective. I have with me Hafiz Ehsan Ahmed Khokhar, who is member Supreme Court Bar Association. Thank you for joining us today. Also Barrister Safiullah Ghori, thank you for being with us, who is a legal expert, also a political analyst. We'll also be joined by Javed Siddiq, who is a senior journalist. Thank you for joining us today. Hafiz sahab, overall, as far as what has happened today, how do you look at the ruling of, let's start off with that, how do you look at the ruling of the Speaker? Of course, I mean, you would probably be a better person to tell me about how much of a, how much we can talk about it, considering now that the Supreme Court has taken notice of it and they will be deciding the matter. Overall, as far as the political position at this time, the political, game, one can call it, if nothing else, of the surprise element by the government, the way that the opposition has taken it, all of those things are concerned. How do you look at it?
Thank you very much. Today is a very important constitutional day for Pakistan. And what is happening in Parliament, the matter is already, identical matter is already with the Supreme Court of Pakistan, because President of Pakistan has already filed a reference under Article 186 of Constitution to Supreme Court of Pakistan by seeking certain guidelines or the reply of certain questions, whether if someone while conducting the proceedings under a vote of no confidence, if he violates the directions of the party head, what is the consequence of that? And if what is the consequence, what is the level of the confidence, still he is qualified for one term, disqualified, or he will go for Article 62F for the permanent disqualification. So this is the continuation of that. Today there was a proceeding before the National Assembly under Article 95 of the Constitution, and the session was held, and the motion was moved by the Federal Minister for Law, and he has pointed out certain things, and suddenly the Speaker or the Deputy Speaker, he made his observation and he passed a ruling.
But he read out the Speaker's observations. That's also something unusual, no?
Yeah, because basically the Speaker is in charge of the House. So when Speaker is not acting, he is acting on behalf of the Speaker.
So
that's why he is using the words, because when you sit in the National Assembly, you always speak about the chair. The chair, whosoever would be, but the running of the National Assembly is with the name of the Speaker. Now soon after, the opposition parties, they approached to the Supreme Court of Pakistan, and Supreme Court of Pakistan has already taken a notice, suo motu notice of that, and they have issued notices to the parties for the tomorrow's proceeding, have constituted a bench of 3 members headed by the Chief Justice of Pakistan. So this is the one aspect. The second aspect on the side of the government would be that when there is a ruling of the Speaker of the National Assembly, so it is protected under Article 69 of the Constitution. And it cannot be challenged in any court of law, and the language and the word of the Constitution is very much clear. And usually the Supreme Court or the High Courts, there is a history that they are not disturbing the rulings or the internal procedure of the National Assembly. Recently, Islamabad High Court has also given a verdict on the election of the Chairman Senate, and they have hold on that the internal proceedings is not within the domain with the courts. So this is the one aspect. The second aspect on...
Let me come back to you, let me include Barrister Safiullah Ghori in the discussion overall. Safiullah, overall, as far as Article 69 is concerned, Article 69 and then I think 50 I don't know which article, I'm not, I think probably mentioning the right, is it 59, where we talk about the fact that once the no confidence motion has already been moved, then...
That's Rule 37 of the National Assembly rules.
Okay, no, but it's also in the Constitution.
It is 95. It is 95. It is 95. The President can't dissolve the National Assembly.
Yes, the President can't dissolve after a no confidence motion has been moved, which is what...
That's the explanation given.
Which is what the opposition, which is what the opposition is alleging.
Yeah.
Right.
So now, what Hafiz Sahab has earlier talked about in terms of whether, in terms of the dissident elements within the PTI, that were taken up subject to Article 62. Those are also, and Article 95, clarification of Article 95 of 69, all of those things are now pending with the Supreme Court. So the ball is now in the Supreme Court to decide on these very difficult political questions. One can't view them in isolation in terms of only legal, because they will have political ramifications for people involved, for the dissident elements within political parties, all of those things. Overall, we have seen, and I think the Supreme Court also remarked on that, a trend by the Supreme Court to shy away from trying to getting involved in political questions. Unfortunately, that doesn't seem to have helped, and they are right in the thick of it now. How do you see the situation?
Right, you're absolutely correct, and I'll second my learned colleague that we are right now in the middle of what would be legal history and Pakistan's general history. This is a massive day. The Chief Justice of Pakistan has, when he took the office, he stated that he would want to stay away from political matters at that point of time. And you're absolutely right. This has been echoed by the present Chief Justice time and again. However, as luck would have it, the most difficult question of Pakistan's history are now with the same person who did not want to decide them. And so we have to look at a variety of things. Firstly, I do want to bring to light one of the recent decisions by the Supreme Court when they dismissed a petition wherein a petition was filed in the Supreme Court asking the Supreme Court to abrogate the no confidence motion, which the Supreme Court dismissed and said that no, this is a normal business of the Parliament and it should go through. And they didn't want to interfere. So, but at the same time, they also directed that this motion should be conducted legally in the way it is. Now, one could argue that the motion has been completed. Because by dismissing the motion, it is now reached its completion. That is an argument that could be made. But as far as Article 69 is concerned, and my learned friend just referred to a judgment by the Islamabad High Court, was a very important judgment which refers to it. In paragraph 27, they lay out the criteria for what should be considered when looking at Article 69. And they say that the powers of the Speaker are not unfettered. The Speaker cannot randomly go around doing anything he wants to do. In fact, the courts do have the ability to look at the Speaker's will and see if there was any malified reason for doing whatever. In the case of Yusuf Raza Gilani versus Sadiq Sanjarani, which was decided by a two-member bench of the Islamabad High Court, they decided that since there was a mistake, the Speaker was not conducting it in a malicious and a malified manner, and since he was obviously not at that point of time acting under Article 5, so that was not held to be a problem. So they and also whilst dismissing, they stated that they have a remedy, that if Yusuf Raza Gilani believes that he enjoys the support of the Parliament of the Senate, then he can just have a re-election. He could just file a vote of no confidence and get done with it. So they gave.
One can argue in this case, in a sense, that now we are saying, just to add on to what you're saying, this whole argument about how early elections was something which was of particular concern to, we were earlier also talking about it, to the opposition. And by saying, the Prime Minister has also, tweeted on this by saying that, okay, let's have early election.
I feel it's a win-win. Absolutely, absolutely. So for the opposition, this is what the opposition wanted, and this is what the opposition got. This is exactly something that I agree with. I do not understand the opposition's perspective of being against this. I do feel, however, the early elections and the benefits that the opposition or the ruling party may get out of it are a different thing. But looking at it legally, let's just for a second focus on what has been done here. Now, what has been done is the Speaker of the National Assembly acted under Article 5, saying that this is his loyalty to the state. And now we have to determine whether this was loyalty to the state or loyalty to a party. Whether Pakistan the state of Pakistan was under a threat or whether an individual of his party was under a threat. This is the difficult question that the Supreme Court will now have to determine.
Which goes, the root of which then again goes to the letter and to the fact that, you know, the Supreme Court earlier chose not to comment on it.
Yeah.
So now they have to again.
And so if I may, now, so this is one of the reasons why.
Let me come back to you,
Sure.
I have to go to Javed Siddique Saab. Javed Saab, can you hear me?
Yes, please, go ahead.
Javed Saab, talking about the fact that, of course, as far as the Supreme Court is concerned, they are now going to have to answer or deal with, you know, explain, give their verdict on very difficult questions which are of a political, you know, not just a legal nature, but of course have larger political ramifications. And they've earlier, you know, chosen not to do that so much. As far as overall the situation is concerned, how do you think, you know, what do you think can be a solution as far as early elections is concerned? Certainly it seems to be a win-win, which is what we've been talking about for all political parties.
Yeah, I think it's very unfortunate. If we look at the history of Pakistan, the political leadership of this country has miserably failed to resolve the political issues through a political process. I mean, through dialogue, through negotiations, through parliamentary consultations. And, you know, I remember the 1977 crisis in Pakistan when the 9-party alliance emerged against Zulfikar Ali Bhutto, the then Prime Minister of Pakistan. For months, Mr. Bhutto was unable to initiate a dialogue with the opposition unless the Saudi ambassador and some other you know, personalities intervened and brought them to a negotiation table. Similarly, on several other occasions, the political parties failed to solve the political problems, and the military and the Supreme Court were sucked in to the political crisis. So the same is happening here. I think the no confidence motion moved by the opposition is within the parameters of the Constitution. However, there was a bizarre twist to all this when the Prime Minister claimed that this no confidence motion was a foreign-sponsored move. And he took the matter to the National Security Committee, and the committee took cognizance of this letter, and the Foreign Office protested to the concerned country. So it is making things complicated, and now the Prime Minister has presented his case to the Parliament as well as to the people of Pakistan. He has addressed the nation. He has also given interviews to 2 important TV channels of Pakistan, claiming that this was a conspiracy, foreign-sponsored conspiracy to remove me from the office because I am pursuing an independent foreign policy. So let's see what happens. But my view is, as a political observer, that things are moving to a fresh elections. There is no other solution because the political problems have become so complicated. The trust level has gone to the lowest level, and I think the way out today is, or tomorrow will be, to hold fresh elections. This has been the demand of the opposition as well, that they want fresh elections, and these elections should be fair and free. So let these parties now sit together and find out a way to hold fair and free elections, and you know, bring the country to a situation where every citizen feels relieved of the pressure and the agony that they have generated through their actions.
Hafiz Saab, overall, you know, what Javed Saab is saying, do you think there's a chance that now, of course, it's gone to court, it will, whatever time it takes, whether it's done quickly, disposed of quickly, of course, there are very important legal, political questions for the Supreme Court to consider, for the future jurisprudence also, in terms of what it means for other, you know, for our political, across the board political parties. It doesn't only mean the government or the PTI. These questions concern us all. what do you think are the chances of the opposition actually saying that, okay, let's let the Supreme Court decide this. In the meantime, let's move on and prepare for fresh elections. Do you think that's a possibility?
I, on this side, say that this is not a political question for the Supreme Court of Pakistan. This is purely a constitutional and legal issue.
Okay.
The constitutional and legal issue is what is the level of the restriction in National Assembly over the Speaker's power. The second would be whether in that ruling the process of the vote of no confidence could be obstructed. And third would be that whether without following the constitutional provisions and the rules of business of the National Assembly, such session called by the President of Pakistan for this particular purpose could be prorogued merely on the observation of the Speaker. So this would be the question before the Supreme Court of Pakistan.
But also about the letter and also about
now come to the point is, if on the other side we see that if you talk about a letter, then this letter should be brought in Parliament. The President, the Prime Minister of Pakistan, he should come to the Parliament, National Assembly, he should speak on it, and that letter should be made part of the record, because in vote of no confidence there are 3 to 7 days available for the discussion over the processing. So if you are
who makes that decision? Who makes the decision that it is in fact as much
now on one side, I'm going on the perspective of the court, because the court will say what is the story and what is the behind of that and what is the objective of the motion moved by the law minister. So if the Prime Minister would come and he will appear in court, in National Assembly, he will make a statement. And he will say that I have received a letter from my ambassador and there are certain issues, and this is not the external threat for Pakistan. Basically, Prime Minister is pointing out the regime change in Pakistan. So I hold a meeting with our national security team, and there are serious observations, and it is important before going to the vote of no confidence, it requires a certain investigation to come on the point whether there is a linkage between the foreign country or the Pakistani politicians. And in the meanwhile, the proceedings, vote of no confidence should be postponed, or I need a ruling from the Speaker that this process, because there is a time process in Article 1945, so it needs to be finished. So this is the one aspect. In that particular case, and the government would have a much stronger case over that. Now the proceedings of the Parliament or the National Assembly would also be the part of the Supreme Court proceeding. That's why there is a problem, might be for the government side to prove on that. And that's why probably as the Supreme Court will issue notices to certain parties and they will call the reply on that. But on the other side, if we go by the opposition side, the opposition's case is that the discretion of the Speaker is very limited. This is not the internal procedure of the National Assembly. This is a procedure. This is a constitutional procedure for a removal of the Prime Minister. So removal of Prime Minister could only be restricted or finished through the constitutional provisions, and the action done by the Deputy Speaker on behalf of the Speaker is mala fide, nullity in the law, and cannot be sustained, and the prerogative given under Article 69 of the Constitution is not applicable for that proceedings. But on the other side, the court definitely will look all these questions.
But the links between, Safiullah, the link, of course, as far as the dissident elements within PTI is concerned, that's also relevant. That question is relevant. One, of course, that it's been asked from the Supreme Court in the presidential reference, I believe, and also because then it goes to the root of the fact how many members are with one particular party and how many members are, do you understand? I mean, overall, if you talk about taking the letter to the National Assembly, which is what Hafiz Saab is saying, and at this time we have a divided house with the opposition alleging that they have the majority against the Prime Minister. So for him to take that route in that kind of environment, that's another question. So all of these are linked questions.
So and I feel like this is the first time we have faced a series of difficult questions within the Supreme Court. Now we have had, of course, dissolved assemblies before. We've had Article 6 and Article 5 being questioned before. But this is the first time we have the question of the interference of a foreign power into Pakistan. That's never happened before. And so this is the first time the Supreme Court now needs to sit and decide whether what interference of a foreign power there is, if there is any interference
but
at all.
But the point is the Supreme Court going to decide whether there
no,
is that interference?
Well,
That's
I'll
not
tell
for
you, yes.
them.
So no, of course, but I'll tell you how I feel it might go through. This is something that I could be incorrect about, but I feel like this is the correct mechanism. So the Constitution of Pakistan under Article 244 and Article 245 appoints the Chief of Army Staff. Now the Chief of Army Staff, along with the other heads of the forces, have taken an oath to protect Pakistan from external threats. This is why I am bringing in Article 245 and 244, because this time around we're talking about an external threat, whether there is pressure from outside or whether there is any sort of threat that could in any manner affect the interests of Pakistan. And so when dealing with external threats, we are dealing solely with the prerogative of the military of Pakistan. Then internal threats are dealt with by our law enforcement agencies, police, FIA, whatever have you. External threats are dealt with by the military. The assessment of how big this threat is to be done by the military, not to be done by the Supreme Court, of course. And the Supreme Court is now duty bound to rely on the assessment from the military. And so this is one of the reasons why one of the parties arrayed is the Defense Secretary, because the Defense Secretary will now have to write a letter to the Chief of Army Staff and ask him how this affects the security of Pakistan. Keep in mind, this is a matter that pertains to the security and to the sovereignty of Pakistan as a state, not of a political party, not of a government. And they will then have to sit down and decide whether anything that was said by a foreign country,
but what about
whether it constituted a threat.
Let me come back to you. What about the observations of Javed Sahab? What about the observations of the National Security Committee? Because of course the Chief of Army Staff is very much a part of that, and the letter was discussed in detail during that meeting, and what the observations that came after that meeting were quite serious in nature. Ji.
Yeah, I think the Security Committee meeting examined this letter written by the Ambassador of Pakistan in Washington, and it was considered at length, and finally the committee concluded that yes, this amounts to a kind of interference in Pakistan's internal affairs, and then subsequently the Foreign Office called the U.S. representative to the Foreign Office to lodge a protest to him, and that was done after the meeting of the Security Committee, National Security Committee. But it has it is being cashed in by the Prime Minister and the PTI ruling party. They are saying that this no confidence motion has been moved at the behest of a foreign power, because the foreign power is not happy with him. He is pursuing an independent foreign policy. He is not becoming a part of a bloc. The U.S. Pakistan is no longer in the sphere of influence of the United States as it used to be during the Cold War. And the Prime Minister has said time and again that the era of Cold War is over and we are not in any bloc. We want relations with all powers, including the United States of Pakistan. He has said in his address that I have no personal grudges or enmity to the United States. I want good relations with it. But this letter is being exploited by the Prime Minister and the ruling party politically. They are saying that a foreign power through the Pakistani agents, the political leaders of Pakistan, they are trying to remove him. And that is why this message is being sent and disseminated in the ranks and files of PTI. And the people, you must have seen the young people, the ladies, women, they have come out on the streets expressing solidarity with the Prime Minister. So this letter or this theory of interference by the foreign power has generated an atmosphere which which we look at through the the lens of political logic that will take
overall, as far as I'm saying that, Hafiz Sahab, as far as the letter is concerned, if it was really, I don't know if you've just been watching lots of local channels as far as our national channels, over the letter is concerned. There is now another kind of conspiracy theories, different kind of conspiracy theories that are being raised as to the whether the letter itself is genuine or not. But the point is for it to actually come to the National Security Committee, for them to raise observations on it, for this to be to having been debated in detail, and after that, talking to the ambassador, all of those things, for it to come to that level, I think those kind of issues are now probably irrelevant, don't you think?
The genuineness of the letter is not an issue.
Okay.
This is a genuine letter. The meeting held with the Americans, it was not an issue. It was genuine because the participants of that meeting was the people from our embassy, the ambassadors, and the defense attaché of Pakistan. And the defense attaché is a serving brigadier of Pakistan Army, and they reported to Pakistan, and it was consulted, discussed, and later on brought to the National Security Committee meeting, and then they issued a press release. Now the government is saying on the one side that we received a letter on the 7th of March, and the opposition saying, if you received a letter on the 7th March, why you did not disclose it? They are giving excuse or explanation because there was going to be the conference on OIC, and we were busy on that, and we would not want that something like to be brought on the record. But if you see these consequences or the sequence of the 24th, 25th and 26th, first time it was publicly announced by the Prime Minister in Islamabad, his political rally, and then it was brought to the media, and then Prime Minister interacted with the senior journalist, and then there was a meeting of the National Security Committee. So the contents and the meeting, it was not an issue. The issue is now in that what evidence leads which compelled the Prime Minister of Pakistan to reach a conclusion that such motion which was moved on the 8th of March in Pakistan, it was connected of that meeting, and the people who were heading a meeting with the Foreign Office or with the Ambassador, they were privy of that development. So this is a question. If something is on evidence and it is proved on record, so it would be really a mess for the opposition, and really would be in a way that our people who are at the top level on the political side, they have a strong connections with the foreign countries. So it would be a good case for the Prime Minister of Pakistan. But on the other side, we need to look at the contents along with the evidence, which is important. But now here the issue is not. The issue is here is not the limitation on the power of the speaker, and the process which is obstructed by under Article 95, which is in the question. And if we will go on the deeper side, then the most probable area would be that both sides, they will sit together and go on for the elections, because Prime Minister is only for 15 days. You can't, allow the country in a constitution way that either if the opposition is not coming on a point, the Prime Minister will continue, because now there would be an interim government, the interim Prime Minister.
So and then overall, let me come back to you. Safiullah, as far as the situation is concerned between the opposition and the government at this time, as far as the Prime Minister, he has to, in consultation with the leader of the opposition, appoint a caretaker setup. And if that doesn't happen, then it goes to the election commission.
Absolutely.
Right?
Absolutely.
If it doesn't happen, it doesn't look like it's going to happen with the kind of acrimony between them at this time, that is also going to be another challenge for any government, at this time, for the government and the opposition. So there has to be some kind of interference, at some kind of, of course we don't want any establishment interference. We don't want, ideally the Supreme Court also doesn't want to interfere. But where we are at this time, there has to be some, for some sanity to prevail.
You're absolutely right. And so historically this has been, and I don't want to say this, but historically in Pakistan's history, it's times like these when the military has in fact interfered and taken over, and time and again we have seen this. However, I just sort of want to go back to the question of the National Security Council, having gone through it, and it's absolutely imperative to understand that the National Security Council is chaired by the Prime Minister himself, and half of the members of the National Security Council are members of the government, the other half are of the military.
Right.
Now, we don't know obviously in this particular scenario what percentage of people voted to do whatever they did, but what they did was a very light thing. What they did was a simple démarche. It was a simple démarche. They called up the ambassador of the United States, they summoned him. This is something that happens to the Pakistani ambassador in India almost on a daily basis. Okay. And we do it to the Indian ambassador regularly. These démarches are a fairly common thing in the diplomatic world. And so we démarched the US ambassador, and the US ambassador, the United States, in their press conference on this matter has officially stated that the actions of one individual diplomat who was acting outside of his diplomatic role when he was speaking to the ambassador of Pakistan does not reflect the US state policy towards Pakistan.
Right.
And that's very important. So the United States has already distanced itself from this entire scenario. It has clearly and unequivocally stated that they do not have anything to do with the democratic processes of Pakistan. And so this is now,
which is a diplomatic way to do things,
which is a diplomatic way to do things. And so now we need to, this is why, and I completely agree with my learned colleague here, that this is the big question that we now need to figure out. Was this a threat to the state of Pakistan? Was it the words of one individual being said to the ambassador? Was it the threat to
also
an
the
individual?
link between, of course, the no confidence motion and the whatever parties are implicated in the letter? Imran
Khan has already stated as much. I think I think it was the day before yesterday, or perhaps it was last night, but he was asked on a TV channel whether he would file treason charges against the opposition leaders, to which he said that he would want to file treason charges. However, the evidentiary requirement for Article 6 is very high, so he will be filing sedition charges against the opposition leaders and against the dissidents in his own party. And that's very important. This shows the kind of this shows the kind of conviction they have in the letter, which suggests that from if we were to believe the government, they would be suggesting that these things are intrinsically interlinked, that a foreign power did in fact spur the no confidence motion, that they were in fact paid. And once again, there's a lot of grapevine rumors about even the amounts that were taken by the individuals and the amounts that were dispersed by the state to Pakistan. Obviously, I don't want to say those amounts out loud, because that would be absolute rumors. How much of it is, we don't know at this point. Absolutely. So these are just random rumors that are on the grapevine at the moment. What I want to just clarify is that we need to focus on the fact that for the first time, this question of national security that has long plagued Pakistan's judicial history has now come to the fore and now needs to be decided, and needs to be decided, as you mentioned, in a very short amount of time. Because under Article 94, the Prime Minister is to continue. The Election Commission can take action, but once again, we already know that Imran Khan has a fraught relationship with the Election Commission as well. And with increasing political heat and the kind of people who might be coming into Islamabad, anything could happen. So the security situation is in fact truly getting out of hand, and so the Supreme Court is the only place left where any prudent decision could come out and try and solve this issue before it gets out of hand.
Ji Javed Saab, what do you expect as far as the Supreme Court is concerned, as far as the call for support is concerned? Because we saw the opposition also take its members, they were asked to be in the lodges overnight, they were asked to walk together for the no confidence motion. Their representatives have not been allowed outside the capital now for weeks, while this no confidence motion has been pending. We've also seen the Prime Minister call out to his supporters of his political party, in this kind of a scenario, with the letter out, with now, things with the Supreme Court, all of those things, at this time, early elections seem to be the only solution. But to get there, to have, a caretaker set up in consultation with the opposition, all of those things, how, difficult do you think it's going to be for all of those things to happen?
Well, I think the Supreme Court in today's hearing has asked the political parties to refrain from doing anything unlawful or against the Constitution. And Supreme Court also said that we expect that all parties, political parties, will behave in a legal, within the legal, parameters of the Constitution, and they will not do anything which is detrimental to the peace and security of the country. And calling the supporters to Islamabad and holding the rallies in various cities and all these kinds of activities should be shunned. This is what the Supreme Court has said today. We hope that the two parties, the political parties, the government and the opposition, will heed to the advice of the Supreme Court, and they will try.
It doesn't matter, you know, whether they heed to the advice of the Supreme Court or not. The question is that at this time, in the capital, if you try, you know, it is surrounded by containers. At this time, you are seeing, you know, even in the last week or so, you saw that, you know, children have not been able to go to school because the situation has been, you know, that there's no clarity and it's been risky, you know, to say minimum, and therefore schools have felt that, you know, the children should not be coming to school. We have that situation as it is. Even when the Supreme Court, in the situation, the Supreme Court asks the political parties to behave rationally or to behave legally, all of those things, even in that scenario, that is what we are dealing with now for weeks. And this kind of atmosphere of uncertainty, of this kind of, you know, political mayhem, so to speak, needs to end now, you know, for the people of this country, for, you know, for us in terms of how it looks to the world also. You know, whether we need, one thing is clear, whoever says what at this time, let me go to Hafiz Saab. Early elections need to be had, because whether you talk about your, you know, government or you talk about your opposition, you talk about this kind of joint opposition, it's not sustainable in long term, and I think the joint opposition also knows that.
Today's proceedings and today's action, either by the government side or later after by the opposition side.
You saw that, you know, people sitting on the speaker's chair, all of those things.
And they passed rulings. And
does it look like, you know, what is the image we're sending out?
We need now the political maturity. And the second would be, we don't want as a politicians or as a government to make a Supreme Court of Pakistan in a difficult position.
Right.
Because Supreme Court of Pakistan is only for resolving the constitutional and legal issues.
Right.
Here we are bringing those issues which might be not within the domain of the Supreme Court of Pakistan as an appellate jurisdiction or the original jurisdiction. At the same time, it would be difficult for the Supreme Court of Pakistan to reverse 2, 3, 4 actions. First action, the reverse of the rulings of the Speaker. The second would be the advice of the Prime Ministers to the President for the dissolution of the Assembly. And the third would be the implementation of the advice by the President of Pakistan. So, I mean, this is the legal and constitutional stages which today have been taken by the Prime Minister or the ruling party or by the President of Pakistan. So this is not a time to go for a big controversy in Supreme Court or outside the Supreme Court of Pakistan and streets. Now the opposition has been calling that the government should have a new mandate for the people of Pakistan. If the government is coming on that point, despite the fact what is being done in today's the National Assembly and what is the consequence of the proceedings in the Supreme Court of Pakistan, they all political leaders, they should sit together. They decide on certain things about who is the caretaker Prime Minister. Because if you are talking about earlier that if the opposition leader is not being on board or the members of the parliamentary committee either from the Senate or the National Assembly, then the matter will go to the Election Commission of Pakistan. The composition of the Election Commission of Pakistan is also incomplete. There is no 2 members from the Punjab and the KPK. So this is another constitutional crisis issue. And even the Prime Minister, he has not good remarks for the Chief Election Commission of Pakistan. He has openly saying so many things. So what is the ultimate for a legal and constitutional and for the good future of the democratic Pakistan? That the opposition should nominate a delegation and the Prime Minister should nominate a delegation on their side. They should together and they should hold regular meetings on 3 issues. Number 1, the election reforms, number 2, the caretaker setup, and number 3, the all steps which needs to be taken for a free and transparent election in Pakistan. So if after 3 or 4 months there would be an election and again there would be the allegation of the rigging, we are not in a position being the country to have all these experiences, and we are not as rich country because billions and billions rupees will be spent
and
on
of course,
the
we talk
elections.
about economy, we talk about investment, that's hardly something.
And hardly dollar is going up, and on the same time there is a price inflation in Pakistan, and at the same time there would be another controversy that the election would be on the National Assembly side, and there will be a government on the Sindh, Punjab, KPK and Balochistan. So we will be creating a mess, and the most
quick comments.
Right. I think whereas of course this is not directly something that they can shoulder blame for, but part of the reason why we are in this mess is also because of the slow response from our institutions. The Supreme Court has taken a very long time. Had it decided the reference that was filed on the to decide whether under the 63A issue, had it already given a decision on it, maybe the way this played out today would have been different. And secondly, and something I've been waiting for, something the entire world is waiting for, the big issue, which is that are we really being threatened by a foreign power or not? And to that end,
unfortunately, that's all the time that we have. Thank you so much for being with us, Hafiz Ehsan Ahmed Khokhar. Thank you for joining us. Bash Safiullah Ghauri, thank you for being with us. Javed Siddiq Saab, thank you for joining us today. As far as the overall scenario is concerned, certainly as things stand, again, there is uncertainty. We don't know what's happening. As far as, of course, we'll know more if there is and when there is a ruling from the Supreme Court. But barring that, the air of uncertainty persists in the capital. We've also got the question of the provincial governments and what's happening there. The Punjab Assembly having been adjourned till the 6th. Overall, there doesn't seem to be clarity about where this is going to go at this time. We don't know what the opposition is planning now. In a call, unfortunately, in a call of surprises, whether it's the opposition or the government, it seems to be, unfortunately, that it is the state of Pakistan that's losing out, because we are losing out on political certainty, we're losing out on our economy, we're losing out on, reform, on making things better. Overall, and one hopes that there will be clarity on these very important questions. Thank you so much for joining us today on this.